The stimulus provoked the interpreter to have certain suppositions, assumptions, and the interpreter searches for the most relevant assumption that aligns with the message of the speaker. Having in mind this theory, we can redefine the concept of anticipation. To do so, we must talk about anticipation as a deliberate enrichment case. Allow me to explain. What does this mean? The interpreter does this. The interpreter deliberately tries to complete the message for his own. For instance, when the interpreter is listening to the speaker, the interpreter formulates certain hypotheses about the information that it's going to come in the message. The interpreter chooses the one that relates the most with the context without doing much effort. Anticipation is that constant searching for this characteristic of relevance. If the interpreter is unable to produce this process, it might be because of lack of stimulus or lack of information to complete the process of anticipation. You can see that this definition here on the screen, in which says that anticipation is the mental production of assumptions related to elements that haven't been expressed by the speaker. The interpreter elaborates hypotheses of contents before the speaker finishes. To continue with the topic of this presentation, I wanted to say that anticipate is not only guessing words precisely, but I would say is a tool to be a step forward and be more natural. Anticipation is a tool for the interpreter, actually. There are two types of anticipation, linguistic and extra-linguistic. For example, if we listen to the word rights, in the case of linguistic anticipation, we can anticipate human rights, work rights, etc. But in the case of extra-linguistic anticipation, this is when we use our general knowledge or encyclopedic knowledge. For example, in a speech about European policies, probably we are going to hear words like parliament, commission, etc. Anticipate does not depend only on language, but different modules of information that the interpreter activates in their mind before interpreting. I also want to explain the difference between anticipation and freewheeling. This doesn't happen in the brain, but in the production process. It's related to the reaction times. Sometimes we are going to be able to anticipate information in a faster way, but sometimes we're going to be slow with it. This could be related to the individual abilities of the interpreter or related to the specific circumstances of the speech. Anticipation can have different objectives. For instance, one of the purposes could be avoid difficult structures. Another objective could be to achieve harmony with the speaker's words related to pace. Other objective could be to improve the quality of the rendition. The interpreter acts as if there was a void in the speech. It's the interpreter's responsibility to fill this void with the most relevant option. Authors like Kalina and Van Bessien talk about a double strategy. This strategy has two main phases. First one, top down, and the second one, the phase bottom up. In the case of the first one, this one is referring to the use of the previous knowledge of the interpreter to anticipate the information in the speech. However, bottom up is about verifying if this information is correct or not with the information that appears later in the speech. The relevance theory disagrees with this differentiation. According to the relevance theory, anticipation is monostrategic. Therefore, anticipation only happens in the first phase of the interpretation, and verifying comes in another phase that they call as verifying. Interpreting is never going to be the same as listening like we do in our everyday lives. The interpreter needs to build a cognitive environment the most similar to the speaker. The interpreter has to consider the assumptions of the speaker as more valid than their own. Sometimes the interpreter has to ignore his knowledge so that he can be aligned with the knowledge of the speaker. So when the information that the interpreter anticipated is confirmed to be correct, the interpreter doesn't take it as an achievement, but something that confirms the validity of his process of anticipation. Lastly, I want to recall that anticipation is a complex cognitive process that can have different types, objectives, and phases, as we've seen before in double strategy. However, anticipation is one of the key factors that differentiate the professional act of interpreting with the communication we we do in our everyday lives, because anticipation allows the interpreter to have the quality and relevance that a speech must have. Anticipation uses the extra linguistic knowledge and the interpreter's ability to formulate hypotheses of meaning, which allows the interpreter to be an active participant of the communicative act. Thank you so much.